I have most of the top of the saxophone taken apart. I'm not going to make you suffer through watching me laboriously take off every one of these keys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these apart. I'm going to fast forward so that you can see how it's done, but it will be done very quickly. And if anything interesting happens, I'll stop the fast forward and let you know what's going on. I ran into a pivot screw that stuck, so I'm going to put the screwdriver in the slot, and then with one hand I'm going to put some force on the screwdriver, and I'm going to try to turn that. Let's see if that comes out. No, that's not moving, so now what I'm going to do, I need a little more leverage on the screwdriver. I'm going to use my vice grips, but don't worry, I don't use this on the instrument itself. Rarely do I use one of these on an instrument. What I'm going to do is get a little more leverage for the screwdriver. I like the vice grip because that holds right onto the screwdriver without me having to keep the pressure on it. Now I'm going to give it a twist with the vice grip on. Come on. There we go. That's all it needed, just a little extra leverage. The saxophone is all apart. All the keys and the guards are off. Here's the screw board with all the hinge rods and pivot screws in it. And there are 20 pivot screws on this saxophone. And I think that's probably the most I've ever seen on one saxophone. But they're all in order and I know which screw goes to which post, so it should be good. If I need to, I can pull the saxophone apart a little farther. There are 2 screws right there, and they hold this ring on. The ring holds the body part to the bell bow section part, and those 2 joints are epoxied together on a Yamaha. Most companies solder these 2 sections together, but on Yamaha and others, and I think it's getting more common to epoxy this. So if you need to get these apart, you can take this ring off and then heat the epoxy up a little bit, and then these 2 sections can come apart. The problem is they aren't held together quite as strongly, so these can come apart. When they do, this bell can go back and forth a little bit. Now this ring holds it together so that it doesn't fall right off, but it does go back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these 2 screws off, and I'm not going to pull the bell section off, but I am going to see if it's loose in there. I'm just going to check it because if it is a little bit loose or if it's ready to come loose, I don't want it to come loose on the player because then the whole thing shifts and it won't play at all. So I'm going to check it out and see how it is. And if it's good, I'm going to leave it. If it's not, I'm going to take it apart, clean it up, and clean up the epoxy and then re-epoxy it. I'm going to take this ring and move it off to the side a little bit. Now I can see where the joints come together right there. And I'm going to just pull and twist a little bit and see if that's good. And it's good, so I'm just going to put these back together. If you look inside of a saxophone, you can see some junk in there. And this one is really not that dirty. I've certainly seen a lot worse than that. Some of those spots are just tarnished, but other spots are junk that's in there. And I'm going to clean that out. But before I do that, I'm going to work with the keys. Now I'm going to pull out the pads, and there are really only two tools you need for that: a poker and a micro torch. The way you do that is you poke into the pad and apply a little bit of pressure. And okay, as soon as the glue melts, it's going to come loose. You have to be careful with those pearls because a lot of those pearls are made out of plastic. These are actual pearls, so they will not melt as quickly as the plastic, but they still can burn or get singed, so you have to be careful. So with the fire, just avoid the pearls. Okay, I think that, okay, there we go, that one's coming out. And there's another key with a pearl on it. I think usually 6 or 7 keys have pearls on them that you need to watch out for. And also, this job looks dangerous because you're near fire, but if you pay attention, then you should be fine. And this fire is very directional, so your hand needs to be right in it in order to cause your hand to be burned. Because you can put your fingers right next to it and it will not burn it, but if you put your hand any closer than that, it's going to not feel too good. Okay, the little one here, you have to be careful with the littler ones too, because those are easier to burn your hand with. Here's the big pile of pads that I took off of there. Now I'm going to remove the key corks. I do that with a razor, and I use a dull razor for that. And the reason why is because the razor is going to be dull after I remove 1 or 2 corks anyway. So I take it out of I have this box where I keep my old razors in, and then when I get enough of them, I'll just tape them together and throw them in the recycle bin. But anyway, before I do that, I use them for removing key corks. And the way you do that is you just scrape it off. There's not really too much to it. Sometimes they want to stick on there though. And the reason I'm taking them off and replacing all of the key corks, usually key corks can fall off with time, like the glue gets old and it gets a little brittle. So a lot of times these key corks fall off. So if you replace them every 20 years or so, usually they don't fall off. Usually you would not just replace all of the key corks just to replace them. You only replace them as they're needed. But when you have the saxophone all apart anyways, it's pretty easy to get at the key corks. So that's when you replace all of them. And key corks really are not that hard of a job to do. It's a pretty simple job. It does not take that long. Well, with saxophones it takes longer because, well, there are so many of them. But it's not really that hard to do. You may wonder about scratching up the metal on the saxophone when you take these off. And yes, it does scratch the metal, but that's okay because it's going to be underneath where the key cork is going to be. And also, it sticks better to a scratched up surface than it does to a smooth surface. So that is one place it's okay on instruments to scratch it up. Some keys don't have any key corks and others have more than one. The A key has 3 key corks. Well, actually one felt right there, and then a key cork, one there and one on the other side. So when you're doing this, you need to look for all of the key corks and take all of them off. I removed all the corks and felts. That took maybe 20 minutes to do that. There is one cork I did not remove, the neck cork. That is in good condition. I could pull it off and redo it, but it's perfectly fine like it is, and it looks like it was done not that long ago. So I'm just going to leave that. I'll just take that off the price of the repad. Most of the corks were on the keys pretty good, but there were a few that popped right off, and they probably would not have lasted much longer. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Look in the description below for links to other related saxophone videos, and please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos.